What's up folks, it's Brett, and this is a long overdue video about Ragnarocktoberfest 2023, which at this time happened about 2 months ago, so I'm a little behind on it, but I still wanted to talk about the event because it was an amazing time. October 6th, 7th, and 8th in San Jose, California, Ragfest 2023. We are back after 4 years, and I just want to start off by giving a huge thank you to everyone who was involved in organizing, sponsoring, everyone who came out and attended, said hi. I think the event overall was a huge success, and I want to talk about my experiences a little bit, any little feedback I had. I was originally planning to make this video more of a travel vlog, like I've done in the past for other things like Maryland Mayhem. Every day I took progressively less footage, so that's not happening. I will recommend Boomstick's video. His event vlog was excellent if you want to see just how much happened and how crazy things could be. Excellent video, please go check that one out. Friday, 10/6, King of the Hill 5v5 practice and Blaster Expo. Originally, the Blaster Expo was supposed to be the only thing happening this day, but it was in the afternoon. So some folks kind of got together last minute to organize a King of the Hill 5v5 practice, and it started around 9 a.m. on Friday, more like 10 a.m. once things got going. But we had a full field. We had the cover, the buckets, we had volunteer refs, we even had community ammo so people could come and play, and it was the same field layout as every practice game and the same exact field as I've played in the past. So it was very familiar for me, and I was just super happy I was able to come into town on time and go to this one. I think we had at least like 5 teams, and I would say it was crucial for teams that were out of town and needed this practice time because it was literally the first time that my team for this event got to play together as a team. So we got 3 games in for Nebula East. That was the team that I was playing on for Sunday, and I ran myself ragged. I have not played King of the Hill in some time, even a practice King of the Hill, and it is so funny how different that game is and how much more easily you can tire yourself out. I won't get into all the details of the format because you can look those up yourself. It's on the website, but it's a 6-minute round. It's a big old square field. You respawn in. If you're not careful, you can really get yourself tired and winded, and I did. Excellent choice. This is also where I met the Nebula International folks, or should I say the Singapore crew that came in from out of town, which was excellent. I was very happy to finally meet these guys in person. They played pretty well too, and I'm sure they can attest that it was a useful practice day. And I will also add on, at this time, the heat of the weekend was very, very apparent. Now in the forecast, it was already shown that this weekend was going to be hot. That is the curse and the blessing of Bay Area during the fall. You never know if the day is going to be rainy or if it's going to be 100 degrees. We weren't at that level, but we were in the 90s. And 90 degrees Fahrenheit plus is not ideal for play. So that probably also went into how I tired myself out and got myself real close to heat exhaustion. And to end this lighthearted and casual morning, I saw that Kyle brought out a new hand skewer based on the original, I would assume, that he was planning to debut at the Expo in a few hours. And I immediately traded my Mark IV for it because I said I have to have this thing, and I believe I made a great trade for approximately $180 Mark IV. I realize now that he was probably, going to show it off at his booth and wanted to still do that, so I probably should have left it there even though I now technically owned it, so sorry about that, Kyle. But it was still on display and I kept telling people who made it. So in case you haven't seen it, it's the newest hand skewer. The difference is that this one is mine. Why own a Mark IV when you can own a hand skewer, am I right? Since this was pretty casual, the only improvement I would say is that I think I only saw this advertised through the BAFT Discord, the Bay Area Discord specifically, and then a little bit of word of mouth. So I don't know if everyone in town knew that this was happening and that they could practice some 5v5 before the actual events. So maybe we could distribute it more if they're ready for that and willing to have more people show up. But ultimately, I thought it was fine. We had plenty of people. That wasn't a problem. Moving into the Blaster Expo, that started around 3 to 4 p.m. There was registration outside for the COVID tests, for the early chrono station if you wanted to do it for today instead of the HVZ the following day, and general hangout space because it was warm, so it was nice to hang outside and see people for the first time. The gym itself was pretty good sized for all the booths that they had. There's a dedicated range for blasters and tables around the sides. the booths for sitting and modding, or just sitting down if you wanted to. It picked up after the first hour or so. It was kind of slow at first, but then we got a good amount of people coming in the next couple of hours. I wasn't a vendor. I snuck in as a vendor because I'm cool like that, and I just gave away some stickers, some patches, a couple blasters I also sold for cheap, buy original Omnia Pro, oopsie daisies, and I also received a few things like blasters. I don't have all of them here right now, but I got something from Luchathor, which I'll show off later, a beautiful, beautiful pixelator mod. I got a worker jump rope from Foam Blast, the best blaster of all time. I got a songbook. That was unexpected. And I also had a chance to test out my loadout for the HVZ the following day. That was the Bert Trooper loadout. The worst possible costume you could probably have in a warm day. And don't worry, that costume did not stay on for too long. After I got some good use out of it, I took it off and then went outside to go die. I did walk around most of the booths and saw what people were selling or just showing off. I think it was a good display of stuff. I liked it more than just having it during an actual event. Instead, the Blaster Expo was the event, so that meant anyone who was actually coming to the gym at that point was probably coming to see people inside the expo, socialize, say hi, maybe buy some stuff. But again, they could also hang out outside, but they knew that that was the event. There wasn't like games going on in the field behind them. I would still say, though, there were a bit of challenges because of how hot it was, and it didn't seem like the AC was on at any point. It was really hard to stay inside for an extended period of time, and I say that as someone who was not required to. I say that as my sympathies towards those who had to, because we did have an indoor mask requirement for the event, so that just made it a bit more challenging as well. So mask required, no AC. It was a lot, and this is also a fun one to talk about, but I have to bring it up in some capacity. The required COVID tests for those who didn't have the vaccine proof, and I know it's a lot. I kind of go both sides on this one. I fully recognize that we wanted to have a convention that was safe for everyone. I just, in the lead up to all of this, it was really hard to know if we're requiring all this extra levels of protection, like the COVID testing and the vaccines and the masks, should we really even be having an event indoors at that point? Because the masks weren't required for outside. I know it's hard. The year is 2023. COVID still exists. It was just all of that with the real hot and stuffy room just made it really difficult. I hope that doesn't have to happen in the future. Again, I want people to be safe. I want these events to happen. If we have to have masks for them to happen, so be it. There's just no way to get around the fact that I think most people would have preferred not having masks required at this point. Fully acceptable if you want to wear one, but we also had stickers that said if you wanted to socialize with people, which I know they do more at events now too, where you can say, hey, I'm good to chat, socialize, or hugs, right? Because, not everyone wants to do that. I feel like that could have solved a bit more of the problems of if you don't want to socialize, then you have the little red color on you that says please give me some space. So just throwing it out there. I know other people were thinking it. I want, again, everyone to be safe. It's really hard when all of these factors combined made it oh my god, I'm actually dying. I need to go outside. The mask is not helping. The expo was also scheduled until 9 p.m. I think we started cleaning up a little bit before that, but there was a good amount of time for people to come in and see stuff and then leave, but the vendors had to stay there for quite a bit of time. And I noticed by the last hour, maybe even 2, it was pretty quiet. So I almost feel like they could have wrapped it up a little bit sooner. Maybe this was just a thing of that's how many people showed up this year and it would be different in the future. Hard to say. I don't want people to get left out because they show up a little bit later and then they find out it's closed just because of lack of participation. I wasn't in charge of organizing it. I just saw things and was seems like people are kind of ready to go and they're kind of beholden to stay because it's not over yet. But we still have to leave the entire venue by 10 p.m. So it doesn't really hurt to wrap things up a little bit early if it's going to help everyone get out and then show up for the next day. But overall, had a good time, good to see people, and I hope people sold a lot of stuff. So the next day, Saturday, October 7th, the Stalking Dead, HVHV, the 3 human factions fighting against the eventual undead horde. I love that Ragnarocktoberfest does this kind of HVZ to make them a little bit different, and it creates some very unique gameplay that I think is very special to the Bay Area at this point. So you got the blue team, the red team, and the yellow team. And as you can see, I'm blue team for life. Despite them trying to put me on 2 different teams initially, we on blue team for life. It's cool that they provide all of these bandanas as well, so you don't have to bring your own. I should also say it does cost money to play at the HVZ and at the competitive stuff, because the venue rental, we'll get into the financial a little bit later too. They fully disclose all that. But, you know, it's nice then that you do get some stuff out of it. You also get provided darts. So in your registration, you do need to disclose what darts you plan on using, because you will not be bringing them. They will be provided, which I think is good. Some of the darts that were provided were a little bit old, and I think that's already been addressed, that in the future it will not be old darts. It'll be nice and fresh darts. But it was still kind of funny to see, like, some people getting some old Gen 2 half darts. It's good. It's good stuff. Now, at this time, the registration was a lot later, which is good. It didn't require you to get there super early. Registration was like late morning, like 10 to 12. Excellent. So you could actually sleep in a little bit. The Bert Trooper did return this day. The Bert Trooper returned, sunblock was applied, water was consumed. It was going to be a warm day, another 90-plus degree day. And I was definitely a little concerned. I think more people were concerned for me. They were like, Brett, if you pass out, that's on you. And I was like, I know, it's on me. Good soldiers follow orders to their grave. The blaster I was using was one that I also got from Luchathor. It was a Nightingale with a unique kit on the front, which I thought was going to make it inherently a little bit less accurate. And that was kind of the point of having it for the Bert Trooper loadout. Ironically, I don't think it really did, but it looked kind of like a Stormtrooper blaster, so it was just yellow and pink and orange, so it was definitely legal. The half darts I acquired were fine. They were like white and pink. They were new. I didn't have enough time to try them out in the dark. They may have glowed in the dark, but yeah, I didn't make it that long. The rules briefing was held in the main quad in direct sunlight. This was kind of rough. A lot of people went to the edges so they didn't have to be in that sunlight, even though the amphitheater was right at the front. So they did a rules briefing on the entire list of rules at that time, just to make sure everyone was aware after everyone had registered and already gotten their teams. And then the teams returned to their respective bases, because the red, blue, and yellow teams have separate spawn points with their captains, where they could store all of their gear at the base, which was constantly watched, which I think was great. They should always have that. You also have a fob, which when you get shot by another human, you would then go back and take a life off of it at your spawn with the person who's watching your stuff. But it also just meant you didn't have to lug all of your stuff around and worry about, where am I going to drop this if I don't need it? You just bring it back to base, and that's where you're safe, pretty much. So we started with the 3 human factions, and then a zombie queen. There weren't a bunch of zombies running around. It was just the one. That was Jesse from Silver Fox Industries, who had a rocket launcher, which was a special stunning device. I did volunteer originally as an OZ, but opted to start as a human, and then I voluntarily joined the zombie team about an hour in, when the first fog rolled in and forced teams back to their bases. There's a lot of like specifics, and I could be here for a lot longer if I wanted to describe all of them, but the overall stuff, every human had 10 lives. A human tagging another human with a dart would require you to go respawn, so that would be 1 of your lives, but if you were ever tagged by a zombie, then you're an instant zombie. So there was a lot of just casual play going on, and this is a 130 FPS game. So you could walk around pretty freely for a while and not have to worry about, you know, like dying forever in the game and turning into a zombie. It was over time that the zombies would accumulate more and more muscle, and then eventually it became, okay, there are a few human factions, but really we got to be worried about the zombie horde. So there were special human abilities, there were special zombie abilities, and since I got to play zombie more, I would say playing a zombie was a lot of fun. And that was one of the benefits of having special perks offered to the zombies too, because a lot of people, when they get tagged and then have to go put their stuff down and be a zombie, it's like, well, guess the game's over for me. Now I have to play as a zombie. This sucks. But there were things you could do to actually level the playing field, and I opted for the spitter zombie missions, which were as simple as picking up darts and then completing a brain accuracy challenge, just throwing it. It's your brain. I don't think I'm supposed to have this, but I do. I'll bring it back one day, I swear. So that meant that I was able to actually stun humans by throwing brains at them, and I'd like to apologize at this time for anyone who I threw a brain at too hard, because it occurred to me much later that I was baseball pitching these, even though they were soft and foamy. When visibility got low, you weren't really expecting a brain to hit you in the face. But some people said it was a lot of fun to watch those things whiz by their face. So I don't know, maybe I was adding to the experience, or maybe I should just try to underhand a little bit more frequently. Either way, there were things like that. At one point I had 3 brains at my disposal, so I could like shotgun blast brains at people. Point was, there were some fun ways to play as a zombie that didn't just require you to run on your feet and try to tag people. There was a dinner break as well, which was plenty long to give people a good chance to fully refuel and rest, and at this time it was starting to get a little bit more to sunset, so when people came back after dinner, it was now like dark, and so people did get a chance to experience the like low light HVZ gameplay on this campus, and then they got to see some more unique stuff brought about by that, like glow darts and scary zombies hiding in the bush that you totally would have saw during the day, but you don't see it when it's dark. And regardless of whether it was later in the day or earlier in the day, I want to say good on the mods for watching for heat exhaustion with players and actively acting people to drink water, make sure that they were attended to if any accidents took place or medical emergencies. Again, it was hot, and I know that is a major risk. The gameplay is one thing, but you're not paying attention to how much water you're drinking, you're standing in the open sunlight, it catches up with you. So good on them for paying attention to all that, and good on everyone else for keeping each other accountable. The Stalking Dead has always had a unique final boss, and this year was no different with the Squid boss, whatever name it was officially. This gave players a chance to be human again as well, which a lot of them opted to. If you were a quitter, zombie for life, fools. But that gave a lot more humans a chance to actually attack the final boss. The zombies attacked in waves. The squid had to defend itself, which it had like movable tentacles as well too, so people got too close and all of a sudden the people holding the tentacles ran after them. That was pretty funny to watch. I often hid behind the squid as well and then just tried to defend our great squid overlord. The humans eventually lost due to a time constraint, but they did really well. This definitely seemed like something the humans could have won. I think overall people had a really good time with the event. It seemed like the humans accomplished a lot of missions, the zombies did a lot of stuff too, and at the end there was an actual win condition that maybe if, just timing is always the worst thing because the venue closes and we gotta get out. It could have been either way. So good job on everyone. And eventually the stats were released showing who tagged whom in the zombie camp. So you can see me, I ate pretty well that day. I was very proud of some of my tags sneaking up on humans who weren't paying attention. Yum yum. Now, despite this campus not being massive, despite us not having 1,000 players, there was still enough going on where I only had like my limited experience, so I have my pieces of feedback, and I hope other people have already shared their feedback from their unique experience. But I will say from my personal experiences, I think the rules briefing was kind of rough in the beginning. It was just overwhelming to have it in the direct sunlight. I know that we should have read them up to this point. We should know how the game is going to be played if we have already paid money and then committed to being there. Maybe they should just highlight the main points. It's like, it's tough to balance that because there is just so much for this game mode, and I hesitate to say you should scale it down a little bit because, I don't know, that's kind of the story that people like too. It was also pirate themed. Did I not mention that? Here's a crab claw that I found. It's mine now. Just the biggest challenge of having it in the direct sunlight for as long as it was meant people were a lot less likely to listen to the whole thing. Maybe instead what we do is we bring them back to their mod camps and then they get a little bit more of a smaller scale discussion of what all the rules are. I don't know. Or inside. Just food for thought. Maybe next year the weather will just permit to not being terrible hot, so it won't be as big of an issue. With HVZ, there's always going to be some sort of confusion as well. It seemed like some of the rules changed or needed to be clarified during the day. That caused confusion. Could vary depending on the mod you talk to, like is the base open for raiding right now, or do we have to wait? So just a little bit of that here and there. It wasn't game breaking. It was just frustrating at times to know, like, what are we allowed to do, mostly as a zombie, and what are we not allowed to do? Because, you know, I'm trying to get tags. I'm trying to help the horde. And then, of course, the time issues for the venue closing meant the final stand got a little bit condensed, but also it was really difficult to help with an effective dart sweep. It's also going to be impossible to do a good one when it's dark, but when you've got also just no time, I would hope that people were able to come back at the next day and sweep, but also because we changed venues the next day, that meant that not everyone who was just hanging around at the next event could just help dart sweep, so that's a challenge, and we don't obviously want to make a mess of the school and not get invited back. But all in all, I had a really good time at the Stalking Dead this year. Thank you, Tarek, and all of your mods for organizing it and putting as much effort in as you did. I got a lot more steps than I was expecting. I thought I was going to take it pretty easy so that I could be in tip-top shape for the King of the Hill the next day. I ended up running like 15 miles. Obviously, that's because I was a zombie and I had the freedom to do that, but I was feeling really rough by the end of the previous day, and I came into Saturday and I was like, yo, let's run the entire school multiple times, get tagged out, run back in. So I was feeling pretty good. That was a freeing experience to be a zombie. Maybe I'll do that more in the future. And the last day, of course, Sunday, October 8th, the Blaster Tag Association King of the Hill 5v5 tournament. Now, this was a different field than Friday and Saturday, as I mentioned, but fortunately a map was provided to show what the layout was going to be at this separate area. Registration was early, which was rough because the previous day ended pretty late, and this one was like, registration is 7:30 to 9. This was just a little bit more for me to consider because I had to drive every day a little bit further than where most people were staying. Now, once we did get to the venue, things were getting set up kind of on track. They had 2 chronographs that you could start chronographing when you got your stuff set down. There was a specific spot for your team to place yourselves and where you could set up a canopy. They were a bit behind schedule because the equipment showed up late, so eventually it overall got pushed by about an hour. But spoiler alert, we did a really good job, and I say we, I mean like mostly the organizers did a good job at getting back on track. So by the end, we really ended on time and got to the finals on time. So that was really good that we were able to do that, even though there was eventually a hiccup that threatened to maybe screw up the rest of the day. And I think a lot of that also benefited from the teams having to register in advance. So we already had the brackets laid out. We knew how everything was going to progress. We just had to see all of those teams register the day of officially. Everyone who shows up is officially on that team that has registered. So they already had their dedicated spots and matchups about a week in advance, and they'd shown that on like the Facebook group and the Discord and all that. So there were 12 teams total and 3 brackets of 4 teams each. The staging was very thorough as well for counting a team's total darts. I'd never seen that thorough levels of counting and checking how many darts you were allowed. I'm not going to get into all the specifics for the games themselves because we would be here for another 5 hours. We can do that on Jangular's channel, but not this specific video. You're not getting that today. The teams that were on deck had their gear, finished their dart check, were then asked to stand away from everyone else before going to their sides after the next game was finished. I liked that because it made sure that there was no questionable stuff going on. We did see some people get yelled at for trying to socialize with those who were on deck. I know it was a bit frustrating to not get to be as close to the sidelines and watch other games when you were on deck, but I mean, as far as keeping everything on the up and up and not having any questionable things happening after you've kind of been cleared that you're ready to go, I think it made sense. The field itself was set up as shown in the King of the Hill rules as well, the same thing we did on the previous day, Friday, for the test day. You get the 3 buckets with reactive buttons for red and blue side, canopies at each spawn, which again definitely helped for a warm day. Wasn't as warm as previously, but still warm enough. And one of my favorite things, the 7-person timer respawn kiosk at each spawn. This is a Blaster Tag Association King of the Hill special. These are really cool because they mean that you don't have to count in your head, and thus making it a little bit unclear if you're taking your spawns regularly or seriously. You just hit a button and it automatically counts down from 15, and then you wait for that to hit 0 and you're back in. Or you hit it twice and it adds to 30, hit it 3 times for 45 for penalties. The field itself was grass, not turf, but there was also no visible grass butter. And if you know, you know. It's nice when you don't have to worry about sliding on something that is a bit more Gross. And of course, one thing that Rag has done in the past, which they did again at this event, was having separate refs with vibrant shirts. So much respect to the refs who put out their time to spend the entire day just watching us and making sure we were playing by the rules. I loved hearing people get called for double penalties and extra yelling because that meant that they were actively engaged. And when people can, undoubtedly hear that, then you know that they deserve exactly what's coming to them. So I want people, the refs on the sidelines, to actually, be yelling at you because they're the ones who are supposed to do that, and then telling you to get off the field or you're hit, because that has to be distinguished from the players on the field who are like, I may have gotten you, and the ref instead is like booming at you. Now, as far as how effective they were at calling infractions, I would say, to be brutally honest, they did a good job, but there was a learning curve that we could all kind of observe because everyone was watching the first games to see how everything was playing out. And they missed some obvious stuff, I would say, in the very beginning. Again, just being brutally honest and harsh. But they got a lot better. So, some of the stuff they may have missed in like the first 2 rounds, they were very easily calling by the middle of the day. I'd say there was kind of like a bell curve where by the middle rounds they were doing a really good job. And then it also kind of weaned off. Like they started missing some stuff by the end of the day too. It's almost like it was a tiring day. And it was a warm day and they're standing in the direct sunlight. So I have the greatest of sympathies for them for doing all that. Of course, I would probably make similar mistakes if I was in their shoes. It's just, we always have to have room for improvement. I'm not going to say, the refs were chef's kiss, perfect, never could do any better, this is the best it's going to get. There's always going to be room for improvement for anyone who's on the sidelines there, but I'm very thankful that they did as good of a job as they did, and obviously having them separate from the actual players was a huge deal. And it was just so ironic to see another team decided to use the exact same colored shirts as them. That was dumb. I don't know how they can avoid that in the future. Maybe just show them earlier. But good job for the refs, and thank you for helping make the event run smoothly. And how could I almost forget the live stream? The whole thing was live streamed, so you don't even need to take my word for what happened or like who won what round. You can go and watch it. Just go watch it now if you want to kill 7-8 hours. It's a little bit quiet at first or at certain points as I've watched back, but you can see everything that's happening. And I have to give props again to Fish for the setup and Mr. Casual Felon Alex, who was on the mic most of the time. There were some great interviews during and between the rounds. The corner angle for gameplay, I think they had planned on having 2, but it just didn't work the day of. Maybe I forget exactly what they had planned, but what you can still see most of the games going on, and the commentary during it is just nice to have as well. I never actually got over to the booth to participate because I was always like watching on the sidelines or getting ready to play, so that's on me. But it looked like people were having a good time over there, and so I'm glad that they made the most of that setup because it definitely added to the game and meant that you could watch the live stream just for the game, but you could also listen to get even more out of it. And of course, to talk more about my team in particular, I was on Nebula East, which was in Group B, so that meant we were guaranteed 3 matches in the round robin before we went to the elimination rounds. I really think that is the best way to go for any of these big events where people are expected to travel. It should not just be instant elimination. You want to get actual games to play. You get rewarded for playing well, but you don't get penalized immediately if you just had a bad first game. So the Nebula East team was Zelkos, Rogue Contra, Boomstick, Goot, Out of Darts, Devil's Nerfworks, and me. So this was a kind of combination of Team Smog from Maryland Mayhem, and then Nebula overall has some overlap, and then there was an extra layer of overlap from Team Paradox from years prior. So Nebula Smogodox. There's my jersey behind me. That's a new jersey. That's pretty cool. Thanks to all of our sponsors who made that possible. For my loadouts, I was fielding a Harrier and a Strife X. Those are the only 2 blasters that I brought, and I only used the Strife X during the test day. I used the Harrier all day for Sunday. So the total points between all the teams then determined which teams got a bye leading into the elimination rounds and what the next matchups would be. I could give you all the details again on how we played, how I played, but to be brutally honest, I forget how some of these rounds went. I need to go back and rewatch the live stream for some of that. But I'll tell you our progression. Nebula East played Nebula West, and then eventually we played Red Tide, then we played Meme Machine. That was our round robin bracket to start. We did not get a bye because other teams had more points. Oh well, but that meant we got more matches. So that's how you metagame. And then we played the Fox Ups, the Battle Cats, Dauntless, and then Red Tide. So despite not getting a bye, we worked all the way through the elimination brackets back up to the final round, and then we lost to Red Tide again, because they were on some crazy stuff that day. They played very, very well, and they deserved the first place. But we still took away second place. We got ourselves a little trophy, or at least the East Coast has the trophy. I'm here, I'm not there, but hey, I was on that team. So it went Red Tide, Nebula East, Nebula International, and then Dauntless behind them. So good job to everyone who played. Again, it was a warm day, so it was a taxing day for everyone who played on that field, but it was really cool to see everyone come out there in their jerseys, play their hardest, and just have a good time. I got a really good vibe just from all the teams who were playing, and that's, we shouldn't take that for granted. It's really important that these games are not only held fairly, but that people are having fun. Because if you're not having fun, then they're not going to come back. And if there's no trust in the organization of it all, then people aren't going to come back. And I know Jangular is the main organizer for the Blaster Tag Association here. He, of course, was not involved in the actual structure during the game because he was playing on a team, but of course he deserved a lot of credit and recognition after the fact and during the award ceremony for all of his hard work and all of the people who helped organize this one too. So watch all of it on the live stream. You can see the ending ceremonies as well. I should say too, there was during this time some casual games going on at a separate field just off to the side, and I can't give you any feedback on those because I didn't play. But they were happening, so you didn't have to just register or watch the King of the Hill tournament. You could go just play casual stuff. And then we all just helped clean it up afterwards, and then we went to dinner. Day was done. End of weekend. Ragnarocktoberfest 2023 concluded. I had a great time. Other little feedback things for the King of the Hill tournament. By the second half of the elimination rounds, Sun's getting real low, big guy. The Sun played a bit stronger of a role where it was, and so it made sense to choose one side over the other based off of how well you could see who's behind cover, because that sun was right in your face. It's kind of like this light I have here right now. It's right there, and you couldn't really see very well if you were on the wrong side. That's just part of the game. That's part of the California sunset, I suppose. I'm not sure what we can do about that other than having much higher on the wish list for an indoor field. I know it's expensive. Having the indoor turf field is on the biggest wish list for anyone involved with this event. So the cost is, what makes that prohibitively expensive. I think I like this field more than what we had in 2019, though. Again, no grass butter. Makes it good. Though that one we did have 2 fields set up. I don't know if it's a good idea to try and do that again. This seemed to work all right, and maybe it was because of how many teams were allowed to register. Yeah, little things in between there. I know that's the overall wish list. Maybe we'll get a nice sponsor in the future that will make that happen. Fingers crossed for sun over rain, because October is a wild month. And because I've waited long enough to make this little summary video, Ragfest has already published their 2023 financials, so you can see the little pie chart of where their money went, the income versus expenses, so you can see that they used basically everything they took in to actually make this event happen, which is just proving again how hard it is to maybe look at something like an indoor venue just for the tournament. So I love that they published this. I'm glad. I think Maryland Mayhem did the same thing too. It's great when some of these larger ones, the nonprofits, show off that hey, this is how much it takes to sponsor this just with money, and then why it's so important to have sponsors for these events. Thank you everyone who sponsored this. I was a small sponsor as well. I like that this year Ragfest had 2 tiers for individual sponsors, and then everything above it was companies, organizations. So I was able to take one of the smallest ones, and it didn't really seem like that would make it a conflict of interest for hey, I put forward $50 for Ragfest. Does that mean I've cheated? Does that mean I paid for my second place spot in the tournament? Nope, they gave me nothing. They gave me no insights, but I gave them $50. And they sent out feedback forms a week or so after the actual event, which I already filled out with some extra details, which I probably either covered here or have already forgotten. So Whoops-a-daisy, but hopefully I provided that information at a relevant time, and I hope they got more feedback from other players at that time too, so they can make next year's event even better, because I hope this event keeps happening. I think it's a great event for the Bay Area. I think it's a great event for just overall the community, because it provides something that's very unique, something that's very special to the Bay Area. King of the Hill has had its origins on this side, and I think the Stalking Dead is also pleasantly unique, and pulling more people out from different parts of the country and even from other countries, I think, is a really good goal. And I'm glad that those folks are saying that they've had a good time coming to these events and that it's worth their travel budget. The Ragfest team put so many hours into this event, and I know a lot of those are volunteer hours, so I can't say enough thank you to those who put your time and effort into this event. Hopefully I can also contribute more on that side in the future. And if you were at Ragnarocktoberfest 2023 and you said hi, thank you. I hope you had a good time, and I hope you have some fun experiences that you can share in the comment section down below.